Okay, the skid steer quick attach power release system here. Look at it from the back. First thing and the hardest part is on these handles. Of course, this was the original here, and I added a basically a tube here so I could still get to this bolt, and then an arm here that's about probably 6 inches long, and then you'll notice I have multiple holes there, and I don't think I'm in the farthest one out. And I did that so that I could have a choice of where to mount the actuator. On the actuator itself, this one is I think 11-inch stroke, and I believe this one is good for like 1,100 pounds of force. There's all different ones, but basically the stronger they are, the slower they're going to move, because your limitation here is of course 12 volts and 20 amps or whatever we're using here. On this one, I've actually built a stabilizer behind here, which is just a big telescoping piece of PTO drive shaft. And then I've added some protection brackets here. Now these things are powered by 12 volt, and all you need is a power and a ground to your switch, and then it will reverse polarity to run this motor in or run this motor out, depending on which way you need. So you need a double pole dual throw switch to do that. Now we'll look at it in the cab. Okay, to watch that system in action, I'm using a latching switch. Initially I had a momentary, you pressed it and it sprung back. This one actually latches on. So what it does, it uses the limit switches on the actuator up front to stop the throw. And I don't know if I suggest that or not, because there are some problems with that, and I'll talk about them. Okay, so it's now, the system is in the unlock position. So I'm going to go ahead and throw it to lock. Little red light comes on, and up here the actuator begins to move. Okay, and here you can see it operating and closing the handles. There goes one of them, popped over center on the cam spring, and usually one lever will travel full distance before the other one. And like I say, on this system with that latching switch, the internal micro switches, travel limit switches in that actuator will stop the power flow. Don't know if I suggest that. I kind of did that just because I got tired of holding the button down all the time. Because what I do is I start to release this thing 30 seconds before I get to where I'm going to park it. Okay, it's almost done, and I'll show you. Okay, there it stopped the throw. But the trick to this, if you're going to let the actuator limit switches stop the throw, then you must build in some extra play. And you can see we're not full travel there, and that's fine, because once those cam over, those springs, the pins are in fact fully engaged. So if you're going to use the limit switches on the actuator as your stop point, you must have, in effect, control cushion on both ends of travel. Extra travel that way, then when it's open, there's got to be some travel left. Otherwise, these actuators, when they hit against an unmovable force, the little worm gears in there are just going to keep trying to push, and you're going to tear up your actuator. Ask me how I know. Generally that happens when I try to attach to something that has snow packed in behind here. If you do that and you throw the actuator, what I do now is I kind of watch that thing, and if I see it stop moving, I immediately hit that switch and stop it. Now, a couple other things that I have here up on the loader, up in there somewhere above those hoses, is a red light. And that red light tells me that this system is in transit. So that tells me that I need to throw this switch to off. Okay, so back to the cab, switch back to center, the unit is locked on and the cycle is complete. Now another thing I did, because this switch could get inadvertently bumped to off, and you would drop your implement in front of you and run over it, and of course it'd be a big wreck. The dog hit this one time while riding in here. So after that, I installed a buzzer on this. So when I put that to release, you can hear that buzzer. That tells me that thing's in motion to release. And going back to full locked. And it quit traveling, so there we're full locked. So that's some of the stuff I figured out with this. That red indicator light that I have up there, right there, that has to be, of course, grounded in the two wires going to the actuator. You have two wires, of course, one's positive and one's negative, but they reverse polarity for direction. That cannot be chassis ground, that light, because, and being a non-LED light, it can reverse polarity. It makes no difference. The light will still come on either direction. And that was an add-on I did later as well, just to remind me to shut that switch off. I built a lot of extra guards around that and that big stabilizer arm. And that whole unit can actually come off there in about 20 seconds. It's as simple as a K-pin on the backside here and one on the other end, and then unplug a plug-in on the wires. And this whole unit here, I can grab the whole thing out, stabilizer, guards, and all will come out of there. That's just the way I did it. Snow piles up pretty heavy in behind here, and I didn't want big ice balls hitting that thing. And if it were to fail, which I have had actuators fail, this is the third one I've had. I literally wore one out, then I wrecked one when it hit unmovable ice in there and it wasn't fully latched. But I can pop that out of here or disconnect it and continue working. Only ever had to do that one time. And literally thousands of cycles on this system. And actuators, I actually keep one of these in spare. They're like $64 a piece. These are much bigger actuators. The initial one I used was like 250 pound force. I think this is 1100. The 250 was enough, and it actually acted faster than this one, but it wasn't a very robust cylinder or actuator. In cold and ice, of course, I kind of look at this in the morning. If this is all iced up, I will spray a little de-icer on here. And also this shaft, I try to keep it lubed up. It actually has a grease zerk on it somewhere there for lubing that shaft. Although I don't really use grease on it. It's almost too thick for below zero. That grease gets pretty stiff. And then, of course, the wiring. You got to run the two wires. I just used a double wire deal there that goes back along the loader, through the hoses, and all the way back, and plugs in down where my loader hoses plug in. There's a quick connect there, a SAE plug, because I take the loader on and off all the time, and I just unplug it right there beside my hoses. That's what I know. I'm sure, you know, you run into some design issues on all this. Of course, the main thing is to make sure you have the room in here. It'd be model specific for each size tractor. Everything's slightly different on each one. But it's been well worth it. I mean, I would pay a lot of money for this mod if I could have bought it. Could you do this with hydraulics? Yes, of course you could. However, I would not apply hydraulic pressure to these brackets. That's not heavy enough for hydraulics. John Deere does a thing on their 5 Series. They use hydraulics, but from an accumulator, not the full pressure of the tractor, but a lowered accumulator pressure that does theirs. However, there are very few of those in existence. I've never seen one in person, only in pictures and videos. And I guarantee you, you're paying $3,000 for that option. My total cost involved in this, with all the actuators I bought, the wire, the switches, everything, I'm into this less than $300, I'm sure. Anyway, good luck with yours.